I'll start by welcoming you to Astrology Alert.
Okay.
It's very nice to meet you. I looked a little bit at your the video you sent me, and I laughed because I thought, oh, she seems to be turning into Trump the way I turn into, into
Turning
Trump.
into who?
Donald Trump. I heard you describing. I think it was him you were talking about. Wasn't that the person you were mentioning? He's got a list of crimes longer than something, and then how you were talking about how the odds were that he would find his way either to a maybe not a prison but to a mental institution
Yeah.
because of the Secret Service and so on. I think that wasn't that the case you were making? I think
Yeah.
at some point. Yeah.
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 I mean, obviously, every time I look at him, it just looks, it doesn't look good. I don't feel like he'll be, well, I remember when he got elected, I cry. I mean, when I first listened to him, I'm like, I tried to give everybody a chance. I tried to see if he was okay. But then when he got elected, I cried for 24 hours. And then my guide said he will be impeached. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that at that point he wouldn't be convicted, but
Yeah. Right.
and it's kind of a dark night of the soul that he's took us through, but I believe we're going to a better place. But I wanted to look at I did read on the debt ceiling, and I don't know if you saw those videos and
What's your sense of that?
oh my God. Um I can see tell what I saw.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see things visually. Sometimes I use cards or a pendulum, but what my guide showed me is Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're like at a schoolyard because it's Earth School. So this is all you have to remember. We're all learning here. And some people are not very immature or evolved, so they only, connect into what, how to grab power. So anyway, they're playing a game. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Kevin McCarthy are bouncing around. They're like, and she's bigger. She's more in control, her wing of the party, than he is. He really doesn't have any power at all because he's a sellout. He just he sells out to whatever he thinks will give him the power. So they're bouncing around at this school and they go, they're playing with the debt ceiling. And so they go behind this garbage can and they're hiding. Now, if they would have went in the garbage can, I go, oh, they're going to trash it. They're going to destroy it. But they're pretending they will because they want to bring down. And then I saw what was behind that is 45. He wants to crash the debt. So because he wants to just anything for him to stay out of jail and get back in power, he'll destroy it and anybody in his path. So they're hiding behind the garbage can. He's behind it. And then he went on that CNN news hall and said he wants to crash the debt ceiling because he's not the president. I'm like, oh my God, what a freaking idiot. I'm like, oh my God. He admitted he stole documents. I'm like, oh my God. At first I was mad, like, why is CNN doing that? But then I'm like, well, it actually worked in our favor. But then, so that's what I see with the debt limit is that they're just going to play a game. And when I'm looking at it more recently, I see still I feel like he's angry. Oh, so then Kevin McCarthy is got his little briefcase in his suit and he thinks he's got it. He's going to get over on the Democrats and he's all happy. And he's walking along and he falls in a big hole. And I don't know what was in there, but there was some kind of either a person or a power that says, oh, you are not going to do this. You're not going to do this. And so I feel like either he's going to destroy his career if he does it, but I do feel like it will be passed. But I mean, like they just, yeah, it's just, I mean, how did those people get in there? And when you say on your videos, how is Fox News allowed to just be on there and spread all this propaganda? How is that? I keep asking my guides, like, how are they allowed to do that?
It's still, I mean, the thing is that in some ways we're experiencing the problems with liberal democracy because all of this is, people argue about something more liberal, more conservative, but overall, democracy is more liberal. And so then when you get people like this who are more concerned with power than with being decent, they start chipping at the edges. And some of these things, unfortunately, aren't laws. Like there's no law preventing you from doing this. In fact, the First Amendment is very strong in saying you can say whatever you want. So then Trump pushes and pushes and pushes. And it's just the way it is until, there is some kind of correction that does
We are
happen.
definitely going what? Sorry.
No, I was just saying that until some kind of correction happens, which, I mean, of course, someone like Trump, I mean, you can see the law moving toward him because, the law doesn't tolerate a lot of those moves.
I feel like then I looked again and I still see Kevin McCarthy hiding behind this pillar of the government, and he's got all this red energy around him, like they're really angry. And then I saw Biden out, like he's out walking out, like the ships are coming in an ocean, and he's walking out and he's got papers. He's like, he's gonna make a deal. I feel like he's, eventually it's gonna get passed, but let's hope it gets passed sooner than later. But I feel like he's willing to make a deal, which doesn't really make me happy because, I hope he doesn't give away, it's just, I hope that he doesn't give away, food stamps for kids and stuff to pass the debt ceiling when billionaires are still paying, not paying their fair share of taxes. But how do you see the debt ceiling?
Well, I don't know exactly what the the conditions of the outcome and all that. I'm not 100% sure on that. I just know that Biden's astrology is much better than McCarthy's right now. McCarthy,
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask you.
And the same with MTG. Like the two of them are really taking risks with the position they're taking because this is Saturn in astrology. When Saturn is in a challenge place, in its transit, if you're doing something that doesn't add up, basically, it's exactly what you said, falling into a hole, getting into a problem where things don't work out for you. So probably, I mean, if we've seen, if past this prelude at all, probably this thing will go right to the very end because they're always trying to see if they can get something up to the last minute. But I don't see it. I just, there's not enough there at all to have.
Yeah, I feel like it'll be passed. I just wish it wasn't even a question, it shouldn't even be, the whole thing is just stupid.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're in an era where, I mean, like you said, right? You can be watching an ex-president on CNN laughing when they said to him, well, hey, when you were president, you're on camera. She didn't quite put it this way, but I saw the film with Trump on camera saying the debt ceiling that's never done, of course, because at the time it didn't suit him, right? So, and Democrats didn't push it; they just raised it. And but so when the woman reporter said to him, "Well, you raised this when you were president," he said, "Yeah, well, that was then, but this is now," and he laughed, and the audience laughed along with him. So you'd think, okay, like that's not funny. That's not funny, and it's also very dishonest. But that's what we're in, where there are millions of people that are following this clown, this lying clown, which is what he is. He's a total lying clown.
Yeah.
And until we get rid of him, we have to be patient. It's like that, unfortunately.
Okay, we should be putting this. I have stuff with that Giuliani.
Giuliani,
Jared's going to jail. I see Jared in jail.
Really?
Yeah, Trump and Giuliani and Jared Kushner selling pardons. I think they did it. I think they did it. I think they're going to find out evidence. That one lady's taking him to court for sexual abuse or something.
Yeah, she's suing him. And Jared, I could never find the time for. All there is a day, so I'm a little more gray on that one because I don't have all the information.
We're not being recorded, are we?
Yeah, we're recording. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know we were on record. Okay.
Yeah, it's recording.
Okay.
So Jared, I don't have total clarity on Giuliani's chart is a mess, and you could
Yeah,
see this
well,
coming.
I
I
don't even
mean,
read on him because he's such a mess. I'm like, what?
yeah,
Like I go,
well, I mean, that's the whole point, that you could see this even before 2021, the way the planets were moving. You know, someone could have, I mean, astrology would have said to him, hey, you know, if this doesn't work out, you've got quite a problem here going into 21, 22, 23, 24, because Giuliani has this chart where the planets are all clustered in one area, well, more like they form this thing, this angle in astrology where they all get affected kind of at the same time. So 21, 22, 23, 24, really bad years. And then you look at the context, and the context is that he broke all kinds of laws. So, you know, it's just the way it is.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's implicated in the Georgia thing too. You know, that funny
Oh
law.
yeah, yeah. When I look at him, he just looks like he looks confused a lot. I see him going through, pages of lawsuits, and I feel like he can't quite get it all organized or together. To me, I feel like there's a lot of drinking. The mind's not real, and he's kind of delusional about
Yeah.
like not very, like he might have been America's mayor before, but I feel like he's gone really kind of down the toilet there with the drinking and the criminal activity. It just looks, I feel like he probably going to end up with some jail time.
Well, I could totally see that, and I definitely see the odds of losing his license, like just being totally disgraced.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's already happening.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I mean, he could end up in jail, but definitely just weighed down with lawsuits. And I just feel like he doesn't really get it. Like he doesn't really, like the mind is not, kind of like when I look at 45, when I looked at him in that courtroom, when he was indicted, he's sitting there and he looked like he walked through the door. Nobody held the door for him at all. He had to push it open himself. It's like, hello, welcome to the real world where you committed a crime and you're going to be held accountable. Nobody's holding your doors open or, cheering for you. And then he said they were crying for him in the courtroom. Well, I think there's laws against, you're not supposed to show favoritism when you're an officer. You're supposed to, or their conduct, you're supposed to just be there doing your job, not crying for defendants or something. I didn't see anybody. I don't think psychically I don't see that. But when I looked at him and I looked in his head, it looked like his eyes, his brain was kind of swimming around his like so much tension and stress. And he was like, I'm like, wow. And then when it didn't look well at all. And when I saw him in that interview with Tucker Carlson, he looked like his shoulders crunched up and his body kind of puffed up and his head was a little shrunken, and he was sitting there, and just spewing all this stuff about hating Democrats and loving whoever is America's competition or enemies. It's just bizarre. I feel like he doesn't make it to the I think people are starting to realize he can't win. He's not going to win.
Is that your sense that he won't even win the nomination, even though he's way ahead now?
That's what I was looking at, because I was I'm going to pull a card on that. Would he win the nomination? That's weird. It's just like making like, remember when they said we started looking at him and what was going on, and people were saying whatever 45 touches dies.
Yeah, that's
I feel like he just brings everybody down with him, and he's destroying the party. He might get in there and pull some, and then get knocked out in the middle or something. Or, I mean, it's just like he's just making a wreck out of the whole thing.
Yeah, no, he's like a bull in a china shop. And the only thing I can think of, though, that if you want to put a somewhat of a positive spin on it, is that life can do this at times where you see patterns and you think, kind of like how you were saying earlier, how is it that this is even happening? Why is Fox doing this? I mean, we're living in this crazy time. But then you think, when you look at a guy like Trump, what he's doing is he's getting the opposite of what he's trying to do. Women are rising in power, and it's because of Trump. And I think that had Hillary won, they probably wouldn't have advanced as much as they have in society. Like, there are more now in government, and this will grow. And women are now a lot more alarmed than they used to be. They're participating more, and that's probably a good thing. So when you think that way, like, imagine now in history, they write the history books, and 50 years from now, they'll say, oh yeah, that was that Trump, that idiot, he was saying all those things. And what happened is women really progressed. So then you realize that the way nature, life, the universe, the divine, all that works can be mysterious in that way, where you look at something that is really awful, and yet it's producing something good, but it takes a while, right? Because it's not an instant thing. I mean, look what's happening. Look what's happening to women's rights at the moment, right? It's looking pretty grim. But
Yeah.
that's another one that I think is a loser for the GOP, a total loser.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way my guides have been showing me is that, comes kind of like what I do in my practice. I do readings and healings with people, but what I explain to people is like, you know what? We are all from the light. We are all going back to the light, and this is what's happening in between that. So sometimes when you step back and look at the big picture, is that it's kind of like after World War II, look at all the good. Now, there were some bad things that came out, but all we have a reference point for justice, and we stood up for democracy, and we stood up, to the bullies. And in the Civil War, we ended slavery. Doesn't mean there weren't problems afterwards, but I feel like this is an inflection point, a turning point in humanity. It's a very interesting time that we're living through, and it's like no other time, because now you have the awakening, and they're saying, don't be woke, don't be asleep, don't notice anything, but we have it's written like with women's rights, it's, and they actually reversed Roe. Like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And then they think they're going to win, but only by cheating. But I mean, yeah. So it's kind of like it's darkest before the dawn. We're going through this dark night of the soul, but in that there is an awakening. It's kind of like, wouldn't it be great if we could all just learn from joy and happiness? With humanity could change and just keep evolving, but it's here we are in this and so in some ways 45 brought that. As painful as it was, like I said, I cried for 24 hours after he got elected, because I'm like, this is going to be really bad. But that appealing to people's worst instincts and their hatred and their fear is when you put that out there like he did, it's like he's grown this monster. Like boys or young men can then get in chat rooms and be prejudiced or be against, it like empowered that, and like in Charlottesville empowered that. And when I first saw Biden, I was like, uh-oh, can't we do any better than that? He's okay, but can't we do any better? Is that the only person? And then I saw a lot of light around him, and I was like, okay. And I feel like he's trying to do the right thing, and he's done a lot of good things. And somebody, he was well known enough and well liked and had good enough astrology. He got in. I was surprised. I'm like, what?
No, you could see with,
he got in.
Yeah, no, with Biden, that was one that I remember in 2018 feeling pretty strongly, because I remember arguing with my sisters because they wanted a woman, and I was saying, I don't know, I'm looking at this guy's transits and progressions. I think he's gonna be the one. And that was even before.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, you could just see this pattern. It's very peculiar when you could see the transits were really strong, the progressions were really symbolic. And then the thing that happened in 2019, there's where Trump, because Trump is a total lizard, he knew that Biden was his most dangerous enemy,
Oh, he knew, yeah.
and he knew, and that's why he tried so hard to take him down with all that stuff with Ukraine and all of that. So yeah, no, Biden for sure was going to be the one.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like
do
he'll win again because Trump's just blowing up the thing. I was looking again today. They have Tim Scott is announcing, what's his name? I feel like he's just a puppet. Whenever I look at candidates, like I was looking at that in the Georgia race with Warnock and that football player, what was his name?
Herschel Walker.
Yeah. I looked at him and it was a cardboard cutout and it just went bloop. I'm like, oh, he's going to lose. And that's what I'm seeing like with Tim Scott.
Tim Scott, yeah. Well, Tim Scott,
He's kind of just a prop. It's like a puppet.
No, I mean, and it's not. I heard him, Tim Scott. This is where you just see, people's corruption, people's venal nature. He was asked about Trump's conviction, on the E. Jean Carroll case, which, by the way, took 3 hours, which tells you that the jury, they saw what was happening pretty clearly. And Tim Scott said, oh, well, he was convicted by a jury of his peers. What else do you have? Well, Tim, I mean, that's how the system runs, right? You go to court and then a jury of your peers figures out whether you did it or not. What are you talking about? What is it that you want us to produce to show that this guy is a misogynist animal, basically, is what he is? Because what Trump said there in that deposition tape is pretty insane. It's amazing that he's even part of the conversation at this point. But it's where we are,
Yeah, but I don't feel like Tim Scott will get the nominee. I was looking at, and it's still far off, but I was looking at Nikki Haley, and because of the woman thing, I don't know where she is on abortion, but that's going to be a big issue. But I did see, I feel like CNN and a couple, I feel like they're kind of they push candidates out at people. And I feel like they're kind of trying to, they don't really want Trump to win, but they're okay with like a Nikki Haley. And so they're kind of like propping her up a little bit. And I was wondering, do you see anything with her? Have you looked at her astrology?
Hers is another one with no accurate birth time. Her chart is, with what I have, is strong enough to be the one, so to speak. But just with my knowledge of politics, I just doubt that.
Yeah, because the macho male, they aren't gonna put her in there. There's
she's
a
not
squad of the party that's not gonna go.
And she's not. She's all over the map. Like she'll take positions really strongly, then switch, and then 1 minute she's against Trump, then she's backing him again. There's not a lot of, there's no congruence, no nothing that I see, to tell me that she would be the one. I'm really skeptical. And then thing with DeSantis is, if he doesn't pick up pretty quickly, because Jupiter just switched signs, went into Taurus, that helps his sign. If things don't pick up for him pretty quickly, I don't think he's got a shot. And even if they do, it's still the wrong time to run, and because 2024 doesn't work out well for him overall. That's the way I see it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I was seeing him not being the nominee. You went blurry.
Did I? Am I back?
Oh, there you're back. Okay. Yeah, I was seeing DeSantis not like I do. Okay, like I see him on a speedboat in Florida. He's a jet skier, kind of more like jet skiing. He's swimming. He's thinking, this is great. He's riding it. And then he hits the shore and he goes, boom, and he goes flying off and he's still like, I'm still standing, but he's in the mud. I'm like, okay, I don't think you're going past Florida. I don't think people want that. Yeah. I think he's too anti-race, he's anti-transgender. He's too against people. And then he went against Disney. I'm like, yeah.
That's the thing, that they don't have anybody to really counter Trump in a significant way. But the bigger problem is that they're all scared of Trump's base, So then if you add Trump's base, which is totally radical, and then you add on to that, the Roe v. Wade decision made them nuts around passing even more laws, draconian laws, to restrict women. So then all the candidates are kind of in a box because they have to go that way. And that way works for 40% of the public, but the other 60% is outraged. So then it's not a good election plan. It's just horrible. They're all kind of boxed in. Anyone that tries to go in there and speak normally, they're going to reject. So they have to do like what DeSantis did, 6-week abortion bans and all these crazy things that the overall population doesn't like, including with the guns too, by the way, because the guns are another problem. They're way too radical around that. It's nuts that, imagine we live in an era where you can get into more trouble for not wearing your seatbelt than for a gun thing in Texas or something. It just makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I'm glad I live in California where they passed some comprehensive gun legislation. And
yeah, but we're in the happy zone. I'm in Washington State, and same thing. Although
yeah, I wouldn't want to be in those states.
I mean, like even here though, a lot of this is like a rural city battle because if you go in Washington State, if you go on the other side of the mountains, I think it may even be worse than Texas. It's so Trumpy, right? With the way people think, the things they do, etc. So a lot of it is the city centers. And in fact, this is true, by the way, if you go to Kentucky, Kentucky is really red, but not Louisville, just Kentucky, like around. So you go to any state, like Texas, for example, Dallas, Austin, they're more democratic. Wherever people pool in cities, they tend to be more democratic. Then if you go to the countryside, they're automatically more Republican. But then people like Trump, who are city dwellers, exploit those people. They tell them stories that aren't true. They put fear in their mind, telling them that there's a deep state and this and that and the other thing. I mean, isn't it crazy that they're constantly, like guys like Jim Jordan, they're constantly saying the deep state, the FBI. The FBI was there when you guys were in charge. So why didn't you figure it out then? I mean, it was your FBI. Like Trump put in Christopher Wray. That was his guy. Christopher Wray used to be Chris Christie's lawyer. He's a total Republican. He put him in there saying, oh, this guy's great, this guy's great. Now he's not great anymore because he just doesn't want to break the law, as far as Trump wants. Yeah. But they're creating a story that, if you think about it, it's like a really bad Netflix movie, and yet all these people follow along. I think underneath all of this, I've always felt that it's a race issue, because I know from the astrology, there are these patterns that are very similar to the Civil War, and that was an argument about race, and we're arguing about it again in a different way now, right? There's a battle. It's really a white supremacist type of approach. That's why they follow Trump, by the way. I'm convinced.
And I feel like that's what they kind of threw Tim Scott out there to kind of create a distraction, or see, there's a black guy, but he's just a puppet. He's not. It's just to confuse people. I think they know he can't really win. When you look, I'm like, come on.
Well, I mean,
when I look at him, I'm like, what? I mean, he doesn't have. I just don't see that with him. He's just kind of. If he did but if he did get in there, he'd just be a puppet, and just proving that. See, we're not racist. So they just threw him out there just to kind of distract people, and they don't know. They don't know who's going to win. They're just like,
no. And by the way, Tim Scott, it's not even like anyone has to, there's like a conspiracy to throw him out there. He probably could just have decided to run because he's African-American and he happens to be Republican, and there's a lane for that, right?
Like, you don't think he has any backers, financial backers?
Some, but not enough to, no.
Okay.
I doubt it. I totally doubt it. I mean, one of the things, if you look at, like, numbers tell you more than feelings. I find that with astrology as well. I always look at the numbers of the planets and I get the information. Like, the fact is, if you go back to the last many elections, women started voting Democratic in the late 80s and into the 90s. And that's why Republicans now have a really hard time winning. So like in 2020, had men only voted, Trump would have been president. People don't realize that, right? That the only reason Trump isn't president is because of the women's vote. It's that simple, right? So this is a fact around this, and so if you keep track of those dynamics, you can kind of anticipate where things are going, because now women are really angry, and rightfully so, going into the election because of the way they're being treated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that E. Jean Carroll. I saw her winning, and I feel like there's going to be more lawsuits coming out with other, because she's probably with 45. He's got so many things, and he can't even it's hard to keep track of them all. But I definitely felt like she would win, and they already have a case from what he said at the CNN town hall. They can probably just possibly get more money, it looks like, but I don't see her starting a whole new case.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is the other thing that you wonder if the time we're in, watch a guy like Trump, and he's got this thing in his head. He seems to think that if he says on live TV, I'm going to go rob a bank, that's okay. But that's also evidence, right? You said it on TV.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, what I would really like to see, and I think we're going to see it, is convictions of people during these years, like 23, 24, 25, where they present evidence in court saying, look, you tweeted this on this date, at this time you said this, or here is you on camera, like Trump, saying, these are your records. They are not your records. The National Records Act does not say you can take the records. That's illegal. This is evidence, and this is how we're going to convict you. And so then, going forward, people are going to be a lot more careful, because Trump is just, throws it out there like, well, if I say it to the world, then it's fair game. But I don't think it is,
Yeah, he's crazy. Yeah, my step aunt, Maya Angelou, said, and I've always I've listened to this throughout the years, when people tell you who they are, believe them.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? She's right. And because people would tell me who they are, and I'd be like, oh, they don't mean it. They don't. But Trump tells you who he is. He said he could shoot somebody and kill somebody on Fifth Avenue and it'd be okay. Yeah. And people just are like, oh, isn't that, he's been telling us all along who he is. And so it's really time for us to kind of wake up and grow up.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, the only thing is how long it'll take. And this is where it can make everyone very nervous, because where someone can solve a personal problem in months, maybe a year or two, when it comes to countries, things can get extended. And so you can blow away a whole decade, or, periods where things are more complicated. And so, but even so, it's like how you said earlier, we went through tough times in the Second World War. There were tough times in the Civil War. Keep your eye on the ball. Both times the good side won. There's no reason to believe the good side won't win again, because there are bigger numbers supporting the good side. But it's, dicey and scary, and I get it.
Yeah. So do you feel like we still have a couple more years, or because I know that Pluto is going back into Capricorn again soon? Do you still feel like we have a year or two, like this year maybe, or the beginning of next year, like of difficult times? With all this stuff going on.
Yeah, because it's Pluto doesn't go into Aquarius to stay permanently until 2025, but it does spend a much bigger block of time in Aquarius next year. But in 25, it's in fully. And the thing is, when you get into 25 and 26, then you get Pluto, Neptune changes signs. Neptune has been in Pisces since 2011, so it's going to be fully out in 26.
Is that disinformation?
Sorry?
Neptune in Pisces, is that disinformation? No.
Yeah, well, it's both. It's okay. So Neptune is disinformation. Like Neptune on the downside is the idea that you're corrupting a very open-ended spiritual energy. That's why it leads into gaslighting, deception, exactly, like lies and all that. On the high end, though, Neptune is why there's so much more information now, good information on YouTube. I mean, you can research any master. I mean, I'm amazed. I used to go to the back in like the 80s, I would go to the occult shop, to look for some spiritual teacher that I wanted to read, and it was really hard to get the book. Now you go on YouTube and it's all there, either in audio or with links to where you can get different information. It's an amazing era around that as well, on the positive side, but it comes with the other extreme. But Neptune getting out of Pisces, I think, will help that, dissipate the idea that perhaps, for example, I mean, imagine if as we go into these upcoming years, people start to value truth more, and the government speaks that way, and it becomes a little bit more like kind of like how smoking became a bad thing. Now everybody don't smoke. It's considered truth. To me, should be respected more, because the way people are treating truth is awful. At the moment.
Okay, but we have this full moon in Sagittarius coming up. Isn't that about truth and secrets coming out? And then it looks like in June, more stuff is coming out.
Moon in Sagittarius. So that's when is that actually? Let me just check.
That is June 5th, the full moon in Sagittarius.
Yeah, well, okay, but see, there is where you're looking at, like, it's a full moon there's a full moon in Sagittarius every year, basically, right? Okay, and then there's a full moon in Gemini, like every sign is covered through the 12 months. So you'll get something in June. Yes, stuff will come out, but to say that moon will solve the entire problem, no, that takes longer. Like full moons act more like triggers to the broader picture. But yeah, it's correct what you say, though, that the idea of Sagittarius and Gemini, they're information signs. So then, yes, that's true. They bring things up. Yeah.
When that stuff came out about Giuliani and then Jared and 45 selling pardons, I'm like, oh, yes, they did. I'm like, oh my God, I almost fell off my chair laughing. It's not funny, because they made a mockery of our system, and that should be a sacred authority given to a president to give a pardon.
Yeah, well,
he pardoned General Flynn and all of his crony friends. I haven't even heard about him lately. I want some of the Steve Bannons and all them hiding away. But when that came out, I was just like, oh my God, that's it, right? We're not going to hear any more crazy stuff. And I heard some people saying, well, we don't really know. I'm like, really? Really? You think he didn't sell secret documents and give away secrets and show stuff to people for his ego? You think he was in the White House respecting our top secret really? You think that?
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
I knew there was going to be, so he sold, gave away, traded, whatever, the whole time he was in there. They're saying, well, they can get him on, with the law, you have to get him on, like, what can you get him on? What do you have the evidence? All that stuff may come out, but they can get him on obstruction. And he admitted in the town hall, he took the documents, and he could, you're right, he can't do that. But,
well, and by the way, the one thing I'll say about, building on what you said about the Gemini moon, like the Sagittarius new moon or full moon. So what's interesting about that is Trump is a Gemini, and Giuliani is also a Gemini. So and this does happen when you are involved in criminal activity, something that is working against you, and separately, where Saturn is during these years, 23, 24, 25, is very unfavorable to Geminis if they've been committing crimes. So then every time you get a new moon or full moon like that, it's bad for those people. So June automatically becomes a problem for Trump and Gemini and Giuliani, both of them, right? In terms of things coming out. So it fits what you're saying around things being revealed, but it could also just be too that the case is building, right? And moving toward something that happens later. The other one that falls, because you mentioned him, Bannon is a Sagittarius, so he's in the same axis. Right? He's also getting drawn in and suffering from that. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing with when you look at astrological charts, I hear this quite a bit, because I'll say, look at all these, people that it just looks like Gemini seems to be a terrible sign in a way because you've got Giuliani, Trump, Bill Barr, MTG. You start to wonder, is this like a crooked sign? No, it's just that they're misusing the energy of the sign.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to worry about you being a Gemini and
If you're a Gemini,
meeting
you're
some
okay.
terrible fate. No, it doesn't mean that.
Yeah.
No.
Well, we all need to, we all answer for, so I
Yeah.
know, like, I've heard about Saturn return stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm crossing my eyes and dotting my T's. You
Yeah.
have to keep your side of the street clean. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and the thing is, on an individual level, if you have Saturn challenging you at whatever point, yes, it does bring challenges. There's no question. They're based on your actions, your karma, right? So with Saturn, you meet your karma. So, like for instance, if a person under Saturn's notorious for injuries and things like that. Well, that's usually wear and tear. Something happens where the totality of your life up to that point then leads you into an injury, or maybe you're just really careless all the time, and then under Saturn is when you find more problems. But there's still way lower scale problems than the idea of someone knocking on your door like the FBI and arresting you. Like, for what? If you haven't done that, then they're not going to arrest you.
Yeah.
Don't think crazy. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. It's just a period where you get challenged. And the other thing is, not for these guys so much, because with these guys, they learn in the sense that they get punished and pushed back and defeated and all of that. But with Saturn transits, they're actually really good to help you grow, because you go through more problems and more challenges, and then you emerge with more strength coming out of that. And I'm not making that up. That's 100% true. I experience that all the time. In fact, sometimes I'll think, oh, geez, I got to go through another one of those. But then when I get to the other side, I realize, okay, now I'm in a better place. Yeah.
When I go to Mercury retrograde, I used to go, oh my God, I can't stand this. I hate this. When is it going to end? And sit on my couch for 3 weeks. And you can't, that's not life. You can't do that. Just not do anything for Mercury. So what I did was I took it and I realized, okay, these glitches may happen. I have to be early, double check things, expect things will break, that I need to redo things, but I always get a better result. So it's kind of like sometimes it puts like the pressure on, but then coal in the earth, when there's enough pressure on it, turns into a diamond. So I think of it like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, how is this fine tuning me, getting me like, because I'm usually a few minutes early or right on time. I'm never like, so I'm like, okay, now you're going to step it up and kind of play games with the energy of time and space so that you are on time, and then know that you may have to redo it. Because, I put out a monthly video and I was late. I'm like, oh God, and the Mercury and my technology wasn't working and stuff. So I'm like, okay, this month we're going to do it a couple weeks early. We're going to be organized and we're going to get everything done. So I use it to fine tune myself. That might kind of be like what Saturn's like. It's like when you need to be on everything, you need to be not miss a beat. When you need to be like, go to sleep on time, don't sit up and eat ice cream. Then you wake up the next morning, well, I'm not on. So, okay, none of that.
Yeah, you just did that. Everything you just said, most of it actually applies more to Saturn. All that keywords like organized, Saturn rules time, Saturn rules self-discipline, Saturn rules pressure and stones and diamonds. So the high end of Saturn is a diamond. The low end of Saturn is a rock, like cement. Cement is Saturnian, but so are diamonds. Anything that compresses. So the secret to Saturn is know how to focus, basically, because focus is that contracting energy. And if you do it well, and then like Mercury retrograde is a period, for instance, to catch up on things. And and you're totally right. Like when Mercury was retrograde, this last one, and I normally think, Mercury retrograde, whatever, I'll deal with it. But this last one, I think is linked to my chart in a more difficult way. I found it harder. And the very first couple of days, I was doing some consultations, and 2 of them in a row, I forgot to record. And I remember thinking, what is wrong with you? Like, the thing ended, I didn't push the button. Something happened, I got distracted, and then I had to backtrack. Very annoying, because, something that seldom happens. And then the other thing can be a person who doesn't show up or gets the wrong time. Things like that happen, but they're just annoyances, right? The thing you said about Saturn, that's way more important, right? People really underestimate the ability of Saturn to move your life forward if you live it well by using discipline. And discipline really means you've learned that something works, so then you hold yourself to it. Like when you said, if you eat a lot of ice cream at night and the next morning you have like a food hangover, so then you don't work as well and then things don't go as well, so then you apply discipline in that sense, right? And that's Saturn, and Saturn that way is stellar. It's in a way the most important planet because it can really help you stay on track, right?
Yeah, spiritual discipline. Now, that's what when I first started training for my work, one of my teachers said to me, "You are an out of control healer." And I was like, "What?" Because I'm like empathic and intuitive and everything was just so, and so what I've used is to pull that in, and the more disciplined, and then somebody told me, maybe in my guides, the more disciplined you are, the happier you'll be. You don't want to tell that to people because who wants to hear? Like, I don't want to be, I just want to do whatever I want. I don't want to have discipline. But it's true. It's true, especially with this Saturn energy. I'm like, okay, you know what? I am on this, and it feels better. It feels like it can be a very high spiritual vibration instead of going, oh no, the Saturn is coming to get me. Something. It's going to be hard.
Well, we should
instead of doing it like that, I use it for me.
Next time we can take a look at your chart and see what, because I'm fascinated now. I'm fascinated by where your planets are, because typically what you find is exactly that, like a blend of really open-ended energy. Like, for example, Neptune is very common in the charts of psychics, healers, because that's the high end of Neptune, where, say, the low end is Trump, let's say, right? But then if a person is speaking about Saturn and through its topics like organization, discipline, like that, then it'll be there as well. And the fascination is when you look to see in your life when it started to emerge and become possibly more important versus when it wasn't, right? Because maybe there was a return or an aspect, something that happened. Like, I noticed with Saturn that in a person's life, the irony is no one likes Saturn in a way because it's a more challenging energy. But if someone is going to change for the better, you always see Saturn putting pressure.
Oh, okay.
Right? It's always there going, time to get your act together. Yeah. Jupiter, which is the great, happy, benefic, lucky planet, does not like working. Doesn't like doing anything that requires effort and sacrifice. Will never do it.
Well, so I'm kind of a workaholic, but I had some lady told me, astrologer told me that she was pretty good. She told me, you have a yod, but she said, I don't know what that is.
Oh, you
and
do?
I looked at it energetically in my meditations with my guides, and I'm like, I know exactly what it is. It's this thing where healing would happen and I had no control. So my next book, I wrote a book on spiritual development and energy healing, but my next book is going to be a book about the mystic, the path of the mystic. I haven't got the name yet, but where you have no control over what's happening. It just happens. And my teachers would tell me, stop picking up other people's energy. Stop. I'm like, I'm not doing it. Like, before a person would show up 2 days before, I'm like, my knee is hurting, or I felt like I swallowed a rock. And then a lady called me, my dog swallowed a rock. I was like, what? I'm like, there's no way I can not pick up I didn't even know she was going to call, but it's through this kind of yod. And at first I thought, I'm really sick. I'm crazy. And then my teachers helped me learn, well, okay, you're not crazy, you're psychic, but I have this ability. And so dealing with that has been quite a, talk about discipline, and disciplining myself where I'm, and things happen that aren't in my control. It's the guides that's all about love and healing and good. But I've had to, whenever I work with my guides and I don't listen to them, it does, I'm like, okay, I'm listening. Because they told me, now healers, meet and find people that need a healing. So I was dating this guy, and he proposed to me. We were going to get married, and my guide showed me a brick wall, and it said, "Set him free." And I was like,
Ouch.
oh, because near self will run riot, Sibyl here. I was like, because I used to always like, I can do it. I can push through. I'm an Aries. I'm like, I can do this. I can do this. And it, so I thought about it for a couple of weeks. I'm like, I guess this isn't working. And then I thought, well, he probably just needs some space, So I went ahead and I didn't listen, and I married him. Boy, was I sorry for years,
So do you know your rising sign?
Yeah, I think I'm a Leo, right? I'm doing some stuff with my hair, but I have no extensions, but I'm a Leo. I'm a March. Should I say it on the air? Yeah,
you don't have to. It's
March
okay.
25th. It's free, and
Yeah.
it's in California. Everybody knows anyway. So March 25th, 1958.
In California.
258, Chicago.
Oh, you're born in Chicago.
Yeah.
2:58 p.m. or a.m.
A PM. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just mentally let me think. So 2:58 p.m. So that makes sense. Yeah.
My moon is in Gemini.
Yeah, your which? Your moon's in Gemini. So like without even drawing the chart though, but we can do the chart in detail next time. But
Okay.
just mentally see what's happening there is 2:58. So picture the sun. The sun is moving up, 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 up. So then by the time you're past noon, it's on the west side of the chart, like on the right, in the right hemisphere. So then Aries is up there. So then you just count 5 signs. That's why you get Leo rising at 3 p.m. It's just the way the thing lines up, right? Like that. And so
Right.
then your sun is going to be in the 9th sign. And your moon, if you said Gemini, is going to be in the 11th sign because you go Aries, Taurus, Gemini. So then that makes you, the sun in Aries, it likes to put out information and teach. That's the key thing. It also
Yeah, I'm a
gathers
teacher.
knowledge. And then the Gemini moon, that's very good in groups, and it's a natural networking type of energy and very communication oriented. That's because of the Gemini moon. But then the real depth of astrology is when you start to look at what's happening when those planets are being challenged by transits or progressions or whatever, including the yod. Like, for example, that yod, you look at it and you look back to see what was happening going back decades when planets were triggering the yod, because that tells you what the yod really is, right?
Oh,
In essence.
okay.
Because you'd say, well, Saturn went through the yod in such a year. What was going on? Then it's not like it's going to repeat the same thing next time happens, but you get better and better at expressing it as you get wiser, right? So, for instance, if you had an injury, because yods can lead to sickness at times.
Oh, okay.
So then you'd say, well, wait a second, was I sick, like randomly sick, or was I doing things that maybe were leading me into sickness? So then you stop
Yeah.
those things, so you don't
Okay.
repeat the same pattern, right? That's the
Okay.
logic. And then the other
Wow.
thing is that you see this also in astrology a lot, where your chart can be both you and how your life invites you to do things or connect you to things. So the more you get control of your chart, connection to it, then, for example, the yod becomes a healing energy because it's a health and healing pattern. So the best example of that is, I've often mentioned this in my different times, is Obama when he comes in 2008, between 2009, 10, 11, he had very bad health aspects. It's because he was trying to pass the Healthcare Act. He was the channel for the country's health. So you're looking at that chart and thinking, wow, what's going on here? This looks kind of dicey. It's because he's taking care of a big problem that was stressing him out as a result of that, right? So that's the logic. It's the same thing too, where you can have a chart of a person with kind of like a murderous mafiosi, like a Plutonian. Say you take a Pluto Sun square, for example, right? That's pretty fascistic energy. They might be an actor playing that part. Like I believe Travolta has that in his chart, and he's done those parts where he's doing like some horrible thug-like person. He's getting to live that out, but it's safe in that, he doesn't have to actually kill someone. He just kills them on camera, right?
That's so
Yeah,
trippy. Oh my
yeah,
God. That's why I love astrology. I started studying a little bit. I use it to kind of tune into people, but that's interesting that you said that too, because I am starting to do groups and getting out more on my YouTube. Because when I first started doing this, it's like, I don't want to promote myself. I just want to help people and I just want to do my work. And then I realized, oh, if you have your own practice, you need to promote yourself. And I was like, what? I can't, what? I don't
yeah,
want to do that. But that's about but I love astrology. It's so interesting and amazing how
yeah.
it works. It's just, I feel like I have a connection to, I do a past life regression too. And I've done them where I went back into times where I was, because astrology has been here since, like back in, I don't know, Sumerian or Babylonian
Oh, yeah.
times.
Super
It's
old.
been here since the beginning of, we were looking at the stars and the planets, and you see ancient structures where they're lined up with the solar or the equinoxes, and where the light that was
Yeah, yeah, totally.
connecting with the moon. So it's very much in our DNA, and it's just amazing to me how it works.
Yeah, no, it's
Love that. So
it's
thank you for
definitely,
sharing that.
no, it's a fascinating language. I mean, the real depth of it. This is the part that is probably the most daunting for people, because many people have this idea that you read interpretations and you hear things and you learn astrology this way, and you can't learn it that way in a deep sense. The original way astrology was used was, for example, in some hidden occult order somewhere, like in Europe. I know this would go on a lot in the 20th century, the Order of the Golden Dawn and things like that. They would hand you a list of the planets and just say to you, study the planets. But what they meant was study them to figure out how you yourself work, how your mind and body works. Because if you're tracking the planets, you can feel the energy of the planets. Like the lunar position, for example, it's constantly touching points in your chart, and you can feel your energy moving around throughout the month. And then you're constantly getting back information about yourself, right? And then and also you understand why people will say Aries is like this, Mars is the other way, because you feel it. You feel, for example, when Mars is around, anyone with Mars around is more likely to get anything from edgy to angry to volatile to even violent, because that's what Mars does, right? When you feel those urges in yourself, you go, yeah, that's what that Mars is. I see. I get it now. And then, of course, you try to control it and all of that. But the point is, you're experiencing it directly. So it's a fascinating language, especially for self-study, self-awareness, self-study.
Well, that's why we need you to give us the map, because most people are too distracted. Whereas back in, before the age of technology and all that, and now everybody's rushing around and on their phone, you don't have time. Well, it's good to make time, but it always helps to have somebody outside to look at and show you the map.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then
Right.
you can connect and go, oh, now I get why that is, what that planet is, how that's making.
Yeah. No, and I mean, like what you say about the time now we have all the technology. Like when I started this, there were no computers yet.
Oh, no.
But right around when I started, there were the first very rudimentary astrology programs. But the thing is now, of course, if you want to learn it in a serious way, the best way is to get yourself a professional astrology program so you can track it. But you can go online, and there are several sites where it's all there. And let's face it, if you're really motivated to learn, there are no excuses. You can get all the information. I mean, I sometimes think to myself, how do these astrologers in the Middle Ages do this? Because they had no computers. With their pen and paper, that would have been a nightmare, a total nightmare. I mean, now we have books with planetary, listings to the second. I mean, NASA puts out the ephemeris, like literally where the planets are. So the information is there, and you can definitely study it. But you got to get involved in tracking. Getting in there. Yeah. Getting all your positions and following it so you get feedback directly without reading someone's this is what the moon means or whatever, like that. I mean, I'll give you an example of tracking, right? So the moon ironically or not, like it was because you have the moon in Gemini. Moon was in Gemini yesterday and the day before, right? So one of the things you do is you track where the moon is just to feel the public mood, what people are talking about and connecting to.
Oh, okay.
So yesterday, the moon was, by then it was late in Gemini, so we had some guests over, and the conversation drifted into this thing around something that's happening in our city here, where they're trying to do a road development thing for transportation and expanding the road, and it's causing a lot of problems because people will lose part of their property, blah, blah, blah. But I immediately, in my mind, I thought, oh yeah, that Gemini is the sign of transportation. So the topic pops up, right? And you can hear it in the public mood, right? Whereas, like, say, once it goes into Cancer, the next sign, then you get into Cancer is, for instance, very connected to food, right? So you'll be maybe in a dinner party, and people are talking about the food they're eating and the food they like, and everything is food, 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 because that's what Cancer is, right? And so over time, you can build the language within yourself. You really start to understand how the signs work and how to get more and more clarity and guidance from them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, that was a long spiel I went off on there, but that's
No.
Yeah.
So interesting. Yeah.
so well. It's been a pleasure speaking with you,
Yeah.
and I look forward to future talks, both on this, the astrology, and also I am sure we're going to have a lot to work with. I mean, the way the political situation is,
Yeah.
I swear to God, it's like week to week. Whenever you think, okay, I've heard everything, and then boom, another crazy thing.
Yeah.
Like this thing with Giuliani, you pointed it out earlier, right? I mean, how nutty can it be that he's implicated in pardons for
Of
$2
course
million?
they did. They do that. So I have heard. So I was watching some shows on, new. Did he do that? Do you think he did that? Or do they have that? Of course he did that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Of
of
course
course,
he
of
did
course,
that.
of course.
Anyway, it was an honor to read with you, and I would love
Likewise.
to do this again.
For
And
sure.
send me the link. I'll post it on
I'll-
my channel. And
I'll visit your channel next time. How about that?
yeah, yeah.
All right.
I am at Sibyl Harmony if anybody wants to find me.
Yeah,
And what's your link?
mine is Astrology Alert. I'll be putting all your
Astrology
information.
Alert. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I'll
put
put
it
all
on
your
my community page when I post the video, or you can just go to
yes,
Astrology Alert and
Astrology Alert. Yeah, now
you'll
Astrology
get
Alert.
all Andre's videos.
I'm known well enough that you can you'll find
If
them
you
in-
subscribe, you'll get, then when every time you put out a video, then people will be able to be notified, right?
Correct.
Subscribe and ring the bell, right?
All right, till next
Okay.
time.
All right, take care.